we will be tackle about the science topic called about the country Kenya. Hello everyone, my name is Dinoro James B. And my group number is Langby Jeffrey Mark, Fausto Alexander, and Tadley Aaron. Our agenda for today is number 1 is colonial history, number 2 is socio-economic, and the last one is cultural impact. Introduction. Kenya is an East African country known for its cultural diversity, stunning landscapes, and wildlife. It borders the Indian Ocean and several countries, including Tanzania and Uganda. Nairobi is the capital. Kenya gained independence from Britain in 1963 and is now one of Africa's leading economies, driven by agriculture, tourism, and services. It's famous for its national parks and wildlife, like lions and elephants. Home to over 40 ethnic groups, with Swahili and English as official languages. Kenya still faces challenges like poverty and political instability but remains in Africa's growth. Kenya's colonial history began in the late 19th century when it was colonized by the British. The colonization process started after the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, where European powers divided Africa into territories for colonization. In 1895, Kenya became part of the British East Africa Protectorate. Key phases in colonization in Kenya. Number 1. British East Africa 1895 to 1920. The British established control over Kenya and began developing infrastructures, particularly railways. European settlers were encouraged to move to Kenya, especially in the fertile highlands, which were designated for white settlers, often displacing indigenous population. Number 2. Colony of Kenya 1920 to 1963. In 1920, Kenya officially became a British colony. During this period, Kenyan people were subjected to discriminatory laws, land exploration, and forced labor. The most notable resistance to colonial rules was the Mau Mau uprising 1952 to 1960, led by the Kikuyu people, which aimed to end British domination and reclaim African land. The rebellion was harshly suppressed by the British, but it contributed to the decolonization process.
Number 2. Land expropriation, early 1990s. European settlers took large areas of fertile land, pushing Africans into low-wage labor and creating economic inequality. Number 3. Kipande system, 1915. Africans were forced to wear identity passes, kipande, which controlled their environment and employment, leading to a greater exploitation. Number 4. Mau Mau uprising, 1952 to 1960. By this rebellion, led by the Kikuyu, fought to reclaim land and end British rule. It was brutally suppressed but played a key role in the independence movement. Number 5. Kenya African Union. The KAU, led by Jomo Kenyatta, pushed for political reforms and land rights, becoming central to the fight for independence. Number 6. Lancaster House, Conferences, 1960 to 1963. These negotiations led to Kenya's constitution and peaceful transition to independence. Number 7. Independence, 1963. Kenya gained independence on December 12, 1963, with Jomo Kenyatta becoming its first ever president. These events shaped Kenya's journey to independence and continue to influence its modern society. Kenya's current socioeconomic issues, political instability, and corruption can be traced back to colonial practices.
Poverty. During colonial rule, the British focused on exploiting Kenya's resources for their own benefit, with a little regard for the local population well-being. Indigenous communities were displaced from a little or a fertile lands, and the economy was structured to serve the colonial powers. This created deep economic disparities, which continue today, particularly in rural areas where poverty remains high. Inequality. Colonial policies favored European settlers and a small elite while marginalizing the majority of Kenyans. The exploration of land in the White Highlands and a racial segregation entrenched inequality with a wealth gap between urban elites and rural population persisting post-independence. Gender inequality, too, was exacerbated by colonial structures that sidelined women education and employment. Unemployment. Under colonial rule, Kenyans were relegated to low-wage labor in agriculture, in infrastructure project like Uganda Railway. The colonial economy was not designed to create meaningful employment for Kenyans, and this lack of opportunities has carried over the modern times, with high youth unemployment being a significant issue. Political instability. The British colonial administration imposed a system of governance that divided communities along ethnic lines to maintain control, divided and rule. This exacerbated ethnic division which continue to play a role in Kenya's political landscape, especially during elections. Colonial era injustice such as land disposition have also fueled political grievance and a complex over resources. Corruption. The colonial government ruled through a small, centralized elite using corruption and patronage to maintain control. This set a precedent for post-independence governance where corruption became entrenched in both the public and private sectors affecting service delivery and economic growth. Education and healthcare disparities. During colonial times, access to education healthcare was limited, with quality service reserved for European settlers and the elite. This left a lasting legacy of unique, unequal access to essential service, particularly in rural and marginalized communities. Climate change and environmental issues. Colonial agriculture practices such as monoculture, farming, and deforestation had long-term environmental impacts. Today, Kenya faces increased vulnerability to climate change, with droughts, floods, and food insecurities affecting large parts of the population.
In summary, many of Kenya's socioeconomic challenges today can be traced back to colonial exploitation. land displacement, ethnic division, and governance structures which have continued to shape the country's development. Colonialism had a significant impact on Kenya's culture, language, and identity, shaping its society in various ways. Number 1. Culture. Disruption of traditional system. Colonial rule disrupted traditional Kenyan cultural practices, replacing them with European system. Indigenous ways of life, such as governance, education, and justice ways, were often disregarded or surprised. Westernization. British colonialists introduced Western education, religion, and cultural norms, which began to replace and blend with local customs. This led to a gradual erosion of indigenous cultures and the adoption of Western lifestyle in urban areas. 2. Language. English as an official language. English became the official language and the medium of instruction in schools, while Kiswahili remained widely spoken and important. English gained prominence, especially in administration, education, and businesses. Loss of indigenous language. Many indigenous languages suffered from reduced use, especially in formal settings. As, lang- as English and Kiswahili took over, some smaller languages face marginalization or decline in influence among younger generation. Kenya's cultural evolution has been deeply shaped by these colonial legacies which continue to influence its politics, social structure, and identity today. Conclusion. In conclusion, Kenya's colonial history left a lasting impact on the nation's socio-economic and political landscape. British colonialization led to land expropriation, racial discrimination, and the exploitation of resources, which displaced indigenous population and entered deep inequalities. While the Mama uprising and the other resistant efforts paved the way for independence in 1963. The colonial legacy continues to influence Kenya's challenges today, including poverty, ethnic division, political instability, and corruption. The blending of Western and indigenous cultures alongside struggles for equality and justice shape Kenya's ongoing journey toward development and national identity.